you know, being up against so many men in those higher positions and them just kind of looking at you like you're this young girl, like what are you going to do? We kind of flipped switches and we became these men. Our husbands always laugh because they're just like, it feels like we married two dudes. We run our jobs, we run our positions, our side gigs as these entrepreneurs, just basically how my dad ran his business.
Yeah.
And just we had to be successful.
Welcome to the Build Up Podcast. I'm Priscilla Facey. We are here talking to inspiring entrepreneurs about their financial past, present, and future. We're here talking to people who were exactly where you are right now. Today, we have Kassandra Kondo.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, Kassandra Kondo, influencer, writer, running your own creative agency. You know, I know we spoke a little bit about how you got into this business and this total shift and pivot you've had to make because of the pandemic. So I want to hear all about the behind the scenes, because when you look at your Instagram page, it's looking all like roses and tulips and chocolate, and I know it isn't that way. So.
No, it's been a hard grind since I started, and I feel like the dynamic and the atmosphere of it has definitely shifted since I started this blog 4 years ago. I was actually I was a lead writer for another company, and I just decided to start a blog on the side because my sister was like, you have to start this, I need a partner to travel with, my blog's picking up, and I was like, oh my gosh, and then you know, we just kind of started this whole thing just for the idea of traveling and getting into it. So starting it 4 years ago, it was like the perfect Instagram feed. You never really discussed how hard it was behind the scenes. And now there's definitely more transparency. So it isn't always sunshine and roses. There is a lot of work. And I've noticed just the shift of how difficult and competitive it is now.
So tell me about what it's like being an influencer, the real deal, because I know it's not, you know, always glam, and your Instagram feed looks so perfect all the time.
Thank you. You know, it's very competitive in the sense of you never really, there's so many different aspects to it now, especially with COVID. It obviously hasn't helped in that sense, but brands that approach you and maybe ask are not approaching you as much anymore, I've noticed. What I was making last year with it and the success of it is completely different than this year. And
really?
It could be that there's a lot more people that have joined it. There's definitely more competition. You know, it's very saturated. Also that people are at different levels of where they're at in terms of like how much they charge, the brands that they're working with. And brands are also working with a limited budget and may not even understand the scope or the importance of what you're bringing to the table for. So I have noticed it in the last year, it just being a little bit more difficult. Brands have cut their budgets a bit. They're not really seeing the value of what you bring. And it's kind of left me sort of at a loss of what am I supposed to do now? I'm not making as much, I'm not as successful as it, or I feel like I'm not as successful as it as I was last year. How do I change things? So I've been trying to pivot in a different direction. So the brands that I do establish a great relationship with, and I'm so thankful for, I'll respond with additional services that I could offer them. And that's just sort of how I've pivoted to make still around the same kind of money that I was making a year or two ago when things were a little bit more successful. And I've been able to just sort of offer the services that I offer to other agencies. So if you need photography, you know, can we sign up a contract to, you know, I provide you with some social help or maybe some coaching, and also the photography on the side, you know, for a flat rate. So
are you actually doing the photography yourself?
If I'm not in it, I am.
Okay.
If I'm in it, my husband actually does all the photography.
Wow.
Yeah, self-taught. He's done such an amazing job. He has been very patient with me because I know I'm not the easiest, but he has learned it. like from never held a camera in his life to now he understands the camera more than I do. Yeah, so he teaches me now. He's like, no, you have to change the lighting on this. And so, yeah, I've sort of pitched to past brands that I have worked with for these services that I can offer. And it's worked. Some of them have said yes, some of them have said no, but some of them just know that at least I exist and that I do these things. And so they can recommend me, or maybe they can think of me in the future if they need help with that type of assistance. And that's just sort of how I've sort of worked the angles. I do love blogging still, and I think that it's such a great aspect to what I do with other agencies, and it's a great learning experience, and it helps you understand trends and how to pivot in a social world where things are always moving at a really fast pace.
Changing quickly.
But there's still that passion there, and I wouldn't have continued to do that because it's not about the money. It's about just the enjoyment of it, and it doesn't feel like a job still, and that's why I continue to do it. But it has helped a lot in my career, and it has helped me to go freelance just because of the learning opportunities that I've had with blogging. So.
No, and I mean that's a really important thing to keep in mind, is that, you know, you literally went from the corporate world initially.
I did. I was like a 9 to 5. I was a writer. I mean, it's just, I was all over the place before I became a writer. I was a mattress saleswoman, like nothing glamorous at all. I was in packaging, like nothing sexy about my career whatsoever. I had started literally from the bottom working in a warehouse. And I didn't know that I had this potential to write. And I started picking up, so one job was never enough. I was always working part-time jobs after my 9 to 5. So I would leave like a warehouse and I would start writing for companies. Like Style Democracy was one of my first side writing gigs. Another agency I started working for where I was writing for Walmart on their websites.
Wow.
And I just realized, I think I'm good at this. I think I'm good at this writing game. And then it was actually when I saw Porter hiring for a copywriter, Kevin, like my husband, was like, just apply. Like, what do you have to lose?
Sure.
So I did. I applied. They called me back 3 weeks later. They said, here's a test. Write in. Just give us a couple of one-liners for a potential sale that we would offer on flights. I did. They wrote me back and they're like, you, out of 500 people, you and another person were the only 2 people that actually understood the voice. And I got the job. And I owe them a lot because they did teach me quite a bit. I started a blog with them. I learned, I became more experienced in writing. Then it was the social media side of things that I started kind of incorporating into the writing style. And then I got pregnant, we had our baby, and we decided, okay, let's move out of the city, let's get a house. It was a fixer-upper, it was not pretty at all. And then I just kind of was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this freelance thing.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go for it.
I mean, and that's the beauty of that. I think, you know, a common theme of some of the other guests that I've spoken with is that period of time in a woman's life where she's just given birth, you're on this like retreat from the world really, and almost in your own little isolation bubble. But that's really a time of reflection, and it causes a lot of transition. And so that I can see for you, you know, caused you to move out of the 9 to 5 space into doing your own thing, which is super interesting. I mean, especially in light of a little bit of what we talked about in terms of your background and growing up. I think you were one of, was it 4?
One of 4.
One of
second,
4.
Yeah, the second in line.
So you've got a sister, and then there's the 2 boys. And you spoke a little bit about how your father raised you really differently, you and your sister, than the boys. I'm
gonna cry. I don't want to cry because like this is such an emotional thing for both my sister and I, because I feel like he saw a lot of, like, he was so successful and he was just this amazing entrepreneur, and he got that a lot from my grandfather. So watching them both start these companies from nothing to being so successful, he never wanted us to forget the hard work that goes into it. But he also didn't want us to just think that everything was going to be handed to us.
Right.
And that we were women. We were already at a disadvantage, but it doesn't mean that you could be successful. And so he taught us this whole hustle mentality of like, you never take things personally, you work, you gain the experience, you're gracious throughout that experience, you learn as much as you possibly can, and you be smart about it. And that you're gonna have to work a ton harder than a guy out there because of just the situation that you're in being a woman. And so I think my sister and I really took that to heart, and ever since we hit like 13, 14, this like work mentality, he just instilled in us. And we never had like a summer off. We always were working in his factory. We were always busting our butts, like not doing the greatest like jobs, let me tell you. Like I mean, I was like cleaning the washrooms of his factory. And my dad was like, you're not getting an office job. You are going to work and you are going to understand the value of hard work, and you're going to get to know everybody. And so it was amazing just getting to know people on the factory side and just that frontline side, and then working in the office. And so that just taught me a lot, and it really gave my sister and I an idea just that you're gonna have to work harder, and you're not gonna, you know, you can't take it personally. It's just the way that it goes, and you just suck it up and you do it, and you take the good with the bad, and you just keep crawling your way to the top. And I have him to thank for that, because I don't think that anyone could have prepared us for just how difficult it is. You know, being up against so many men in those higher positions, and them just kind of looking at you like you're this young girl. Like, what are you going to do about it? Like, how are you going to be? And so I have him so much to thank for it, because he prepped us for the challenges ahead. And I have a lot to thank for him. I owe him everything for the success that I have now. And I know my sister says the same thing. It's just, we kind of flipped switches and we became these men. And our husbands always laugh, because they're just like, it feels like we married two dudes. Like they're always joking about it, because we do. We run our jobs, we run our positions, our side gigs as these entrepreneurs, just basically how my dad ran his business. And just, we had to be successful. And so you mentioned that, you know, he instilled that in you and your sister. How do you see it differently from how your brothers were raised, and even how they are now as adults? I mean, like I think he knew that it was going to probably be easier for my brothers, and I mean, I don't know really like the challenges that my brothers go through, but I mean, you can see it. I don't know if they face the same challenge as it being a female, especially in different industries. I mean, but yeah, like I think he had to have the talk with us more than my brothers, because he knew it was going to be a challenge for us And I also think he was younger, and he was hustling at that time, and he was the entrepreneur, and he saw it, and it was something that he had to communicate to us, and we took it, and we had great role models, like my father and my grandfather, and even my mom. She worked hard too when we were young. And we had these amazing role models growing up that we just sort of took these, you know, attributes from and use them in our day-to-day. I know you mentioned your mom. She's, you know, very big on beauty and how she looks at all times. You've never seen her without her hair completely done. My mom is like a glam. I've never seen her like, even when she's sick, she still looks amazing. And I think a lot of it, like especially my sister, I'm more casual, I'm definitely more like my dad. But my sister just always put together and just always looking fabulous. And I just think, like it was my mom's doing for that. My mom always looked amazing, always put together, always made sure us kids were always put well together, very well behaved. My mom just so glamorous, And I know you had some challenges growing up in terms of, you know, you had this transition and this shift in your family with your last name. Yeah, I mean, both sides of our family, like on my mom's side particularly, you know, my grandfather had to go through a lot when he was younger, you know, moving from Quebec, like from like a small French-speaking town over to Ontario, which is crazy because it was only like a 1-hour drive over the border. When mining was booming, they had changed their last name because there was just a huge, I don't know what the problem was then, but English-speaking people just really did not take to French-speaking people very well within their own country, which was crazy. And like when my grandfather came over, they changed their last name. And he couldn't speak any English, only French. And the teachers were so cruel. And it was just not a fair, it wasn't fair, like the judgment on that. And we've received it on both sides. We've noticed it on both sides of our family. It's just, it wasn't fair. And not just that, my husband's side too. There's a lot of racial injustice. And even within your own country, even when you're born and raised, there is some unfair treatment. It's really sad having to see that and see how they experienced it and listen to their stories. But the assumption is that you just get over it and you have to move on from it. So yeah, it hasn't been tough, and seeing those challenges on both sides has been, eye-opening, and it definitely teaches all of us a lesson about being open and just accepting to all races, all religions, all just backgrounds and things like that, and not being intolerant of it. Yeah.
And I mean, even on the other side of your family, you mentioned as well that you had to, you underwent a name change, like for yourself.
Well, yeah, my dad's side as well. I don't have a lot of background on that, but they as well had to. And yeah, it was how they had to pivot through those times.
Yeah.
It was how they had to deal with racial injustice and just, people looking at them differently because they have a different last name than what everybody else was used to in this country at that time when they had moved over. So they also, it's funny, like we all have to do that throughout our lives, and unfortunately in their case it was a little bit more serious, so they as well had to.
So you mentioned that part of what you're doing now as part of your pivot to help really increase your income and increase the brand's options for you is that you give them a different value proposition.
Yeah.
So what does that mean specifically, and what are some examples maybe that you can give us? It seems like everyone now, everyone's an influencer.
Yes.
From what I see, everyone's page looks aesthetically really perfect, and I think it's really important for, some of the people who are starting out in this, helping them to understand, well, if you want to actually be ultra successful in this saturated market, you have to offer them something else other than, here I am, I'm going to advertise for you.
Exactly, and I think you can still be very successful just offering yourself and your platform and being really great at how you share or showcase their brand and the product that they ask you to share. But I started 4 years ago when you had the perfect aesthetic, when a brand would just approach you with a large budget and you could work with them and it was great. But now that you have those established relationships, you see how the dynamic has changed. You see that there is more saturation in the market, and it's great. I know I've met so many amazing people through this entire experience of blogging. It's also how can you sell yourself to them more so than just being an influencer.
Right.
And so in my experience, when they gift you something, for example, if a company reaches out and says, we'd really like for you to try our coffee, for example. They send it to you, you share it. This is my opportunity to write them now and reach out to them and say, we can work together on a collaborative basis through my social platforms. Or I also offer these other services if you require them. And so this is where I share my portfolio in addition to my media kit, and share with them that I have this experience of helping agencies with copy and social media help, or even just photography. If you don't have the means to hire, let's say, a professional photographer, or you haven't really thought of it, but you really want to get into that and you like the style of photography that I offer, this has been another option, another way for me to pull in an additional income and also establish a really great relationship with these brands. So I would say about 80% of the time I get rejected. I do, and you know what? But I never give up, and I never stop, and they know that at least I'm there and I exist.
Yeah.
And there have been times where they've come back and they've said, listen, you know what? We do want to work with you. Can you provide this, this, and this, and we'll draw up a contract, and then it's worked.
Okay.
So the odd times that it does, it makes it worth it for you to continue fighting and coming back.
That perseverance, and I can see now, having spoken with you about even how you grew up, like you can see that kind of that grit and that toughness of like, don't take it personally. They're gonna say no. You're gonna be rejected, but it's all good. You just kind of keep going, keep grinding. It's something that's just it's so critical and important, right? And especially in kind of where the state we're in now, and it literally begs the question for me, like, you live in Oakville, everything looks beautiful. Like, you've talked about these struggles, income is not what it was, so how are you actually still maintaining your lifestyle?
I just continue to hustle, work as hard as I possibly can. I mean, the minute I wake up to about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, I am working.
Oh, wow.
So I don't stop. I mean, like, I'm grateful that my husband, you know, brings in a decent income and that we are allowed, you know, we were able to renovate our home because the house that we bought, she wasn't pretty. There was a lot of work that had to be done, and that was a lot of our hard-earned savings and money that went into it. But I don't stop. I just continue to work, and like I'll take advantage of every nap time that Knox has. The minute he's in bed, I am like right on my laptop, working away, like doing everything I can, even on mat leave.
This is like a good point though, and I mean, I know, you know, when I was selling real estate, I would meet a lot of couples, and it was always the challenge when both people were self-employed, because if there was any sort of dip, you would see it. And you know, mortgage brokers and banks, they don't like, you know, they have a preference for stable salaried positions. And so it's almost a blessing in this case that, you know, even though your business is not what it was, the lifestyle, et cetera, can still, you know, doesn't take quite of a hit because you've got a partner who's, you know, got a more stable income in regards to being I guess he's in corporate, right?
He is,
So that's certainly helpful. And I can also see though that like your perseverance as an entrepreneur and just your character, like you're not letting this stop you. You're gonna keep going.
No,
you're doing your pivot.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't think a lot of people know that about me either. I'm usually, you know, I'm quiet. I'll listen to what everybody else has to say in the room. But the wheels are always turning. And that is exactly where we got that from my father, that he was such an amazing entrepreneur. Everyone that worked with him always had amazing things to say about him because he was such a great leader. I've just been so grateful for the amazing opportunities that agencies have provided me, and that I'm grateful for just continuing to, you know, ride through some of the hard times and then some of the good times, and just continuing to work hard at it and just learn as much as I possibly can.
So I do have a question. What advice would you give to your younger self?
To never doubt your capabilities. And I never gave myself the credit, or I never believed in myself enough to know that I would ever be at this point. I didn't think I was ever good enough or maybe smart enough, just because school was always a struggle, and I always like, you know, just never really took things seriously or a career seriously. And I think that part of it was, if I took it seriously and failed, then I would have felt absolutely ridiculous. So if I could, I would definitely say to believe in yourself more and just to keep pushing harder. And that's all I needed to do throughout the last 5 to 10 years that I've been working, was just to keep pushing and keep learning and just have that drive to do better. And I think if I could have told myself that a while ago, I probably would have been a little bit further ahead than I was now. But I'm still proud of the fact that I did learn that, and that I had gone through those struggles and realized just to never doubt myself for a second and just to continue to work. So yeah, that's what I would tell myself.
I think that's really beautiful. One thing that I've definitely encountered with, whether it's clients I've worked with, even myself over the years, is people don't actually realize their potential and what they can do. And this is in part, you know, why we're here, why I'm doing this podcast, why I formed this company, is like, this is actually possible. You need a little bit of belief in yourself, just as you said, and also just the opportunity, right? And so that's why we're here. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Build Up Podcast. You can find us everywhere podcasts are available, Spotify, iTunes, all of that. And we'll be back next time.